Today we're pleased to have John Venza, the Vice President of Adolescent Services at Outreach Project, in our studio to talk about various aspects of the adolescent drug culture today. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Art.
Great. What's it like for somebody to grow up in the year 2011?
I got to tell you, it is a lot more accelerated than it ever was before. And I think, we look to the technology. We talk about adolescents in general, and everything is about their peers, peer relationships, peer groups. You hear parents all the time, they're friends, they're friends, they're friends. And, that's exactly what it's supposed to be, they're friends. The difference, I think, now is, at the end of the day, they were disconnected from their friends, short of a phone call and being told to get off the phone. They're connected almost throughout the day and throughout the evening now, whether it be Facebook, whether it be texting, whether it be both at the same time. And I think that everything that's happening is happening almost on overtime. Everything that they're negotiating is happening very, very quickly. And when you look at the substance abuse issue around the kids, that is also happening very quickly as a result of it. I think the technology has taken a lot of the guessing out for kids. 20 or 30 years ago, the way kids learned about the drugs and alcohol was they would hear, they would go back and forth with their own fears, their own imagination, their not knowing. They would hear about it, they would hear people talk about it. Today, they talk about it and they go on to one of many different websites. They see photos, they see video footage of people under the influence. They see all of what it looks like, short of basically touching it or smelling it through the computer. So a lot of the fear is removed. They read blogs about it. So everything is accelerated, today.
And a lot of it, of course, the information they're getting isn't balanced because they're getting it from proponents of a particular drug or people that are themselves enthralled with the effects.
Very often it's other kids blogging and putting things on there about the drugs. And, unfortunately, the challenge is kids swear by the internet. They're in an argument or a disagreement with their parents about it, and they're saying, "You're wrong. I saw it on the internet," as if it's absolute. And a lot of the times it's another 15 or 16-year-old posting information that's, inaccurate, which is double jeopardy.
Right. So, I mean, this constant communication you mentioned, of course, is really important, even in terms of purchasing drugs. I mean, the texting and the ability to arrange pickups and finding resources and things like that.
Yeah, it's almost taken on the complexion of a 24-hour convenience store. They have access 24 hours a day, nonstop. And the ability to text, even in school, under the desk, and making arrangements, it's just nonstop. And I think it impacts the procuring and the securing of it. It impacts their information. It impacts their instructions about it. So I think that's a huge component that's much different, that has really, really kind of accelerated it. And I think has also contributed to the average age of onset kind of declining. Kids are less fearful of it. I think also that kids' exposure or contact with it is different too. 30 years or so ago, basically there were a couple of kids that would sell the drugs in the school, and kids knew who those kids were. And generally a lot of kids didn't have contact with them. They were not in their peer group. There was a little bit of fear around that. And if you look at marijuana in particular, today the marijuana being so costly, the scale of economy has kids selling pot in grams. So everybody is able to become a dealer on some level. Kids are buying from friends, hence the contact with a dealer, so to speak, has almost kind of gone away. They're contacting friends who are buying 3 grams or 4 grams for themselves, selling 1 gram and making a few dollars. So it's also removed that barrier, that obstacle that used to keep kids at bay for a little while longer, have them a little bit more worried or concerned about taking that next step.
And you add into that the fact that the mixed messages that society really hasn't figured out a way to deal with regarding the medical use of marijuana and the allowance in many states for medical marijuana use and how kids interpret that.
Correct. Well, and a lot of the interpretation is, wow, that's really good stuff. I heard the medical marijuana is really strong.
And it's a medicine.
So now they see it as being something that the government is allowing to happen, that it's being prescribed, and it's also some of the stronger pot. So there's a lot of mixed messages there, a lot of confusion around it, and I think it's just another variable to negotiate. Kids are not viewing marijuana as a serious issue. It's always been it's just a plant, or I know somebody who's got good grades and they're still doing fine smoking on it. It's always been a tough sell. Now, interestingly enough, a very common statement I hear from kids is that, well, it's not like I'm using heroin.
Right.
You know, the kids are very well versed. They know exactly how to kind of keep parents on their heels, and they create a picture in their parents' mind from everything they've heard in the media about heroin and teens. So suddenly they know that they have just created an image in their mind, or their parents' mind, that it's only marijuana. So it only recreates the challenge that we've been dealing with for the past 30 years on it.
But yet, if you begin to get involved with mood-altering substances, it's not unlikely that you're going to experiment with a variety of substances.
Yeah.
So although they may not be using heroin, some are using prescription narcotics.
Correct, correct. And I often say also that kids who are dealing, using prescription pills, painkillers, other prescription medicines, and other drugs did not wake up and say, I think I'll do prescription painkillers today. I think I will sniff a bump of heroin today. They got there via the marijuana, alcohol, and that whole progression. And I remind folks that, as much as they attempt to kind of minimize the piece in that progression is still there in the majority of cases of adolescent progression.
How do you address parents today in this high-paced texting world of always in contact, and the urge to use mood-altering substances still as strong as?
I think one of the things that I'm clearly noticing around parents in this issue is, we sit here, we have this dialogue, and a lot of this stuff, we're in it every day. We're in the trenches, and we've been doing it for a couple of decades. And it occurs to me that when I'm presenting information and I'm thinking that, the parents probably have this, but I'm going to give it to them anyway, it continues to surprise me how many of them do not. There's still a lot of stuff that we think is very basic that is not. The concept of medicine cabinet safety is still an issue that, as much as we've talked much more about it in the last year or two, there are still folks that haven't gotten the message yet. When we educate folks, for example, parents, there was a little bit of a media blitz a couple of years ago around Robitussin and the dextromethorphan. Well, a lot of parents, what they took out of that was literally dextromethorphan, Robitussin. They didn't take out the fact that there's probably about another 95 products in CVS or Rite Aid that sells products containing dextromethorphan. So on some level, we gave them some information, but we're assuming that they've gotten the rest. And it's very difficult. I talk about navigating this whole thing. Navigating is a word I use. I know it's kind of a case management word, but I think it really is helping parents navigate, getting them to partner with somebody that has an idea, understanding adolescent issues, understanding the addiction issues. There are lots of folks out there that do, and connecting them to doing that, because things as simple as the limit setting sometimes, the phones. There's a lot of fear when kids begin to use substances, and pulling back for fear that their kids will escalate, and I think helping parents with that. Another one that very often is that, about their friends and their peers. A very difficult issue, again, comes back to the friends. One of the first things parents look to do is separate their children from their friends as a result of maybe the alcohol or the marijuana or other substance use. And in the addiction treatment field, we all know about people, places, and things. The challenge is when it comes to adolescents, friends are pretty much their world at 12, 13, 14, 15. And many of these friends were friends with them since they were 5 or 6 or 7, before the substance using or substance experimenting days. And they still go to school with them. So very often the idea that you can't see your friends anymore is an unrealistic expectation. So I often try to work with parents about empowering their kids to make decisions around their friends when they think it's time that they should pull out or remove themselves, rather than the unrealistic expectation that they're going to stop being friends with some of these folks.
Well, again, you're such an expert in this regard. If people want to contact you, how might they do so, John?
Clearly, through outreach, they can always get a hold of us over there, myself or one of the professionals there. Outreach House in Brentwood is area code 631-231-3232. Either myself or one of my clinicians there would be perfectly happy to lend a hand, specializing in working with all the teenagers, school-age adolescents. So I'm more than happy to.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Art.
Appreciate it.